The cantina on Omega-7 Station was not a place for the weak. Smoke filled the air, mixing with the smell of alien liquors and fear. In the darkest corner, 3 figures sat around a metal table that had seen better days. These were not ordinary beings having a drink after work. These were killers. The best killers in the galaxy. Vex moved his long snake-like body closer to the table. His green scales caught the dim light as his yellow eyes watched the entrance. He was from the Nagari species, known for their deadly poison and lightning-fast strikes. Next to him sat Kor, a giant warrior from Draken Prime. His 4 arms rested on the table, each one capable of crushing steel. His red skin was covered in scars from 100 battles. The third member of their group was Quinn, a Vorthan whose body was more machine than flesh. Blue lights glowed where his eyes should be, and metal plates covered half his face. They were waiting for someone. A client who had sent word through the underground networks. Someone who needed a job done. A very expensive job. The cantina door slid open with a soft hiss. A figure in a dark cloak walked in, moving carefully between the tables. Other customers looked away quickly. They could sense danger, and they wanted no part of it. The cloaked figure reached the table and sat down without invitation. For a moment, nobody spoke. The figure kept their face hidden in the shadow of their hood. Vex tasted the air with his forked tongue. He could smell fear, but not from his companions. The fear was coming from their client. Finally, the figure placed a small data pad on the table. The screen lit up, showing numbers that made even these hardened killers pause. It was more money than most people saw in their entire lives. Enough to buy a small planet. Enough to retire and live like kings. Kor leaned forward, his massive frame making the chair creak. "That is a lot of money," he said in his deep voice. "What kind of target requires such payment?" The client pushed the datapad closer. "The target is human." The 3 assassins looked at each other. Something passed between them, something their client could not understand. Vex's tongue flicked out again, faster this time. Kor's 4 hands slowly moved away from the table. Quinn's blue lights dimmed as he accessed information in his mechanical brain. "Human?" Vex repeated the word like it tasted bad. "You want us to kill a human?" The client nodded, confused by their reaction. "Yes, his name is Marcus Webb. He is the captain of a small cargo ship called the Defiant. He has been causing problems for my employers in the Outer Rim territories." Humans were still new to the galaxy. They had only made contact 50 years ago. Their planet, Earth, was far from the main trade routes. Most aliens knew little about them, except that they seemed weak compared to other species. They had no natural weapons like claws or fangs. They were not very strong or fast. They could not survive in most environments without special equipment. "Just one human?" the client continued. "He flies alone most of the time. Sometimes he has a small crew, but never more than 3 or 4 people. It should be easy work for professionals like you." Kor stood up suddenly. His chair fell backward with a loud crash. Every head in the cantina turned toward their table, then quickly looked away again. The big warrior's 4 arms hung at his sides, but his hands were shaking slightly. "Find someone else," Kor said in a voice like thunder. He turned and walked toward the exit, his heavy boots making the floor shake with each step. The client stared after him in shock. "Wait, the money! You have not even heard the details." But Kor was already gone, disappearing into the crowded corridor outside. Quinn's lights flickered as he processed data faster than any organic brain could think. He had access to the galaxy's largest databases. He could read reports from 1,000 different worlds in seconds. After a long moment, he stood up as well. "Contract declined," he said in his electronic voice. There was something in his tone that the client had never heard before. Something that might have been fear. "Find another solution to your problem." The mechanical assassin walked away, leaving only Vex and the confused client at the table. Vex remained seated, but his scales had changed color. They were darker now, the way they got when he was nervous. He picked up the datapad and studied the information about Marcus Webb. The human looked ordinary enough. Brown hair, brown eyes, average height. The kind of person you would not notice in a crowd. 50 million credits, the client said desperately. I can make it 60 million. 70 if you need it. Vex set the datapad down and looked at the client. His yellow eyes seemed to glow in the dim light. There is not enough money in the galaxy to make me hunt a human. But why? The client asked. They are weak. They have no natural weapons. They cannot even breathe the air on most worlds without help. Vex stood up slowly, his long body uncoiling like a spring. You do not know the stories, he said quietly. You were not here during the contact wars. Those are just stories, the client protested. Myths to scare children. The Nagari assassin moved closer, and suddenly the client could smell the poison on his breath. It was a scent that had been the last thing many beings had experienced. Before they died, I have killed princes and generals. I have poisoned entire armies. I have ended the lives of beings who could tear apart starships with their bare hands. But I will not hunt a human. Why not? Vex leaned down so his face was close to the client's hidden features. Because no one who hunts humans ever comes back. And the few who do survive long enough to send a message all say the same thing. What do they say? They say that humans are not prey. They are something else entirely. Something that should not be awakened. The client grabbed Vex's arm as he started to leave. Please, I am desperate. My employers will kill me if I do not find someone to take this contract. Vex looked down at the hand on his arm. His poison glands began to work, preparing to deliver a fatal dose through his skin. But instead of killing the client, he simply removed the hand gently. Then you should have thought of that before you decided to make an enemy of a human, he said. My advice is to run. Run far and run fast. Because if Marcus Webb decides to come looking for whoever put a price on his head, all the money in the galaxy will not save you. With that, the last of the three assassins walked away, leaving the client alone at the table. Around the cantina, other customers began to whisper among themselves. Word would spread quickly through the criminal networks. The most feared killers in the galaxy had all refused the same contract. A contract to kill just one human dot. The client sat in the darkness for a long time, staring at the datapad and the image of Marcus Webb. What kind of monster looked so ordinary? What kind of creature could frighten beings who made their living from fear? Outside in the depths of space, a small cargo ship called the Defiant continued on its route to the outer rim. Its captain had no idea that someone had just tried to hire assassins to kill him. He had no idea that his reputation had preceded him across the galaxy. He was just doing his job, delivering supplies to the frontier colonies. But somewhere in the darkness between the stars, other eyes were watching. Younger eyes, hungrier eyes. Eyes that belonged to those who had not yet learned why the galaxy's most dangerous killers refused to hunt humans. News traveled fast in the galaxy's underworld. Within 3 days, every criminal organization from the core worlds to the outer rim had heard about the refused contract. In bars and hideouts across dozens of star systems, bounty hunters and mercenaries gathered to discuss the strange event on the mining world of Kepler 442b, a rough planet where the law barely existed. A group of hunters met in their usual place. The bar was called the Lucky Shot, though most of its customers were anything but lucky. Smoke filled the air from a dozen different alien cigarettes, and the floor was sticky with spilled drinks and other things nobody wanted to identify. Thane sat at the bar nursing his third drink of the day. He was human, one of the few who had left Earth decades ago to live among the stars. His hair was gray now, and deep lines marked his weathered face. He had been a bounty hunter once, but these days he mostly just told stories and tried to forget the things he had seen. A group of younger hunters occupied a large table in the center of the room. They were loud and confident, the way young predators always were before they learned that the galaxy was full of bigger predators. Their leader was a blue-skinned Altarian named Kess. He was tall and lean, with sharp teeth and claws that could cut through steel. His species were natural hunters, evolved on a world where only the fastest and strongest survived. 50 million credits, Kess was saying to his companions. Can you believe it? The Crimson Syndicate offered 50 million credits for one human. And nobody would take the job. His friends laughed and agreed. There was Bolt, a young Taraxian with cybernetic implants that made him faster than most living things. Next to him sat the twins, Rix and Rax, who came from a world where pack hunting was the only way to survive. Across from them was Nova, a psychic who could read minds and predict attacks before they happened. I heard it was even more than 50 million, said Bolt, his electronic voice crackling through his throat implants. My sources say they offered enough money to buy a space station. Kess slammed his drink down on the table, and 3 of the galaxy's best assassins walked away from it. 3 killers who have never failed a contract, and they refused to hunt one cargo pilot. The young hunters burst into laughter again. To them, it seemed like the funniest joke they had ever heard. Humans were new to the galaxy, weak and soft. Creatures who needed machines to survive in space. They had no claws, no fangs, no natural armor. Most of them could not even lift as much weight as a child from the stronger species. Old Griselda wheezed from her corner booth. She was ancient, even by the standards of her long-lived species. Her huge body was covered in scars from centuries of dangerous work. One of her eyes was missing, and she had lost 3 of her 8 arms over the years. But she was still alive when most of her enemies were long dead. You younglings do not know what you are talking about, she said in her raspy voice. You think this is funny, but you were not here during the Contact Wars. Kess turned toward her with a mocking smile. The Contact Wars? You mean those stories about the first time humans met other species? Those are just tailies to scare rookies, are they? Griselda asked. She shifted her massive body, and the booth creaked under her weight. I was there, boy. I saw what happened when the Corvan Empire tried to enslave the human colonies. The bar grew quieter as other customers turned to listen. Griselda rarely spoke about the old days, but when she did, smart people paid attention. The Corvans were the strongest military power in that sector, she continued. They had conquered 47 different species. Their soldiers were twice as big as humans, with natural armor and weapons that could cut through steel. They thought taking a few human worlds would be easy work. Kess rolled his eyes. And let me guess, the humans won through the power of friendship and determination. Griselda's remaining eye fixed on him like a targeting laser. The humans did something the Corvans had never seen before. When the invasion fleets arrived, the humans did not surrender. They did not run. They did not try to negotiate. They just started killing Corvans. She paused to take a drink from her enormous mug. But here is the part that scared everyone. The humans did not just fight back, they learned. Every time the Corvans used a new tactic, the humans figured out how to counter it. Every time the Corvans brought new weapons, the humans found ways to turn those weapons against them. Thane had been listening from the bar. Now he turned around to face the group. His human eyes were sad and tired, but there was something else in them too. Something that made several of the young hunters look away. She is right, he said quietly. I was there too. Not as old as Griselda, but old enough to remember. Kess laughed, but it sounded forced now. Oh, here we go. Another human. Telling tall tailies about how scary his species is. Thane walked over to their table, moving slowly but with purpose. He was not big compared to most of the aliens in the bar. He had no visible weapons and no cybernetic enhancements. But something about the way he moved made the young hunters nervous. "Let me tell you about humans, kid," Thane said, pulling up a chair. "Every species in this galaxy has some natural advantage. You Altarians are fast and have those claws. The Taraxians are strong. The psychics can read minds. The machines never get tired." He gestured around the room. "But humans? We are average. At everything. Not the strongest, not the fastest, not the smartest. We cannot breathe most atmospheres or survive most climates. We break bones easily and heal slowly." "Exactly," Kes said. "So why is everyone so afraid of you?" Thane smiled, but it was not a happy expression. "Because we are persistence hunters." "Do you know what that means?" The young hunters shook their heads. "On Earth, our ancestors hunted animals much bigger and stronger than themselves. Animals with claws and fangs and thick hides. Animals that could run faster and hit harder. But our ancestors had one advantage those animals did not have." "What advantage?" "We never gave up. We would track an animal for days, sometimes weeks. We would follow it until it was exhausted, until it could not run anymore. Then, when it was too tired to fight back, we would kill it." The bar had gone completely silent now. Even the background music seemed to have stopped. "That is what makes humans dangerous," Thane continued. "Not strength or speed or natural weapons. We just do not know when to quit. And when you corner us, when you threaten our families or our homes, we become something else entirely." Nova, the psychic, suddenly looked uncomfortable. Her species could sense emotions and intentions, and she was picking up something from the old human that frightened her. "You are just trying to scare us," Bolt said, but his electronic voice wavered slightly. Thane shook his head. "I am trying to save your lives, because I can see it in your eyes. You are thinking about taking that contract. You think 50 million credits is worth the risk." He stood up and looked at each of them in turn. "Let me give you some free advice. There are things in this galaxy that look harmless, but will kill you without hesitation. Black holes look like empty space until they tear you apart. Some of the prettiest flowers in the galaxy are deadly poison. And humans look weak until you make the mistake of hunting one." Kes stood up too, his claws extending slightly. "You are just trying to protect your own species." "Maybe I am," Thane admitted, "but I am also trying to protect you. Because if you go after Marcus Webb, you will not come back. And before you die, you will understand why every smart predator in the galaxy has learned to leave humans alone." He walked back to the bar, leaving the young hunters sitting in uncomfortable silence. Around them, other customers began to whisper among themselves. The story would spread from here to a dozen other worlds, carried by traders and travelers, who had heard the old human's words, but Kes and his friends were young and proud. They had never failed a hunt, never backed down from a challenge. 50 million credits was more money than they could imagine, and how dangerous could one human really be? As the night wore on and the drinks flowed, their confidence returned. They began to make plans, to discuss tactics and equipment. By morning, they had convinced themselves that the old stories were just myths, that fear was making people see monsters where there were only ordinary beings. They had no idea that across the galaxy, in the cold depths of space, Marcus Webb was making his regular supply run to the frontier colonies. He was alone on his ship, just one human against the vast darkness. He had no idea that young hunters were planning to come for him, but somewhere in the ancient part of his brain, the part that his ancestors had used to track prey across endless plains, something stirred. Some instinct that had kept humans alive. For millions of years whispered a warning. The hunt was about to begin. 3 weeks later, Kes and his hunting party found themselves in the cold darkness between the stars. Their ship, the Razor's Edge, was built for one purpose: hunting. It had the best sensors money could buy, weapons that could punch through. Military armor, and engines fast enough to catch almost anything that tried to run. Kes stood on the bridge, watching the scanner display. After days of following leads and bribing information brokers, they had finally tracked down their target. The cargo ship Defiant was exactly where their sources said it would be, making a supply run to the mining colonies on the edge of known space. "There she is," said Bolt, his cybernetic fingers dancing over the sensor controls. One small cargo vessel, exactly as described. No escort ships, minimal weapons, standard civilian shields. The twins, Rix and Rax, checked their equipment one final time. They wore matching black combat suits and carried identical weapons. They had been hunting together since they were children, and they could communicate without words. In their minds. This job was already finished. Nova sat quietly in the corner, her eyes closed as she tried to read the thoughts of anyone aboard the target ship. Her psychic abilities had never failed her before. She could sense fear, anger, desperation from light years away. But when she reached out toward the Defiant, she found something strange. "How many people are on that ship?" she asked, opening her eyes. Bolt checked his readings again. "Just one. The captain, Marcus Webb, flying solo on this run." Nova frowned. "That is what the sensors say, but I can only feel one mind, and it is ... different." "Different how?" Kes asked. She struggled to find the right words. "Most minds are like open books when I touch them, full of thoughts and emotions that I can read easily. But this one is like looking into deep water. I can see the surface, but not what lies beneath." Kes waved off her concerns. "You are just nervous because of all those stories the old-timers told us. One human against 6 professionals? This will be the easiest money we ever made." He activated the ship's communication system and opened a channel to the Defiant. "Cargo vessel Defiant, this is the hunting ship Razor's Edge. Prepare to be boarded." There was no response from the human ship. The Defiant continued on its course, as if nothing had happened. "Maybe their communications are broken," suggested Rix. "Or maybe he is trying to ignore us," added his twin brother Rax. Kes smiled, showing his sharp teeth. "It does not matter. Bolt, disable their engines. Let us see how brave this human is when he cannot run." Bolt fired an electromagnetic pulse at the cargo ship. It was a standard technique used by pirates and bounty hunters across the galaxy. The pulse would shut down the target's engines without destroying the ship or killing anyone inside. Usually, cargo pilots surrendered immediately after losing their ability to escape. The Defiant's engines went dark, and the ship began to drift. But still, there was no communication from the human captain. "That is odd," Bolt said, studying his instruments. The pulse knocked out their main engines, but their life support and internal systems are still running. "He should be trying to contact us by now." Kes was getting impatient. "Then we board the ship and take him ourselves." Rax, get the boarding tube ready." "Nova, keep reading his mind and warn us if he tries anything clever." "Bolt, watch the sensors for any other ships that might be coming to help him." The hunters moved with practiced efficiency. They had done this dozens of times before. Board the target ship, overwhelm any resistance, complete the mission. It should have been simple. The boarding tube connected to the Defiant's cargo hold with a metallic clang. Kes led the way, his claws extended and ready for combat. Behind him came the twins, their weapons drawn. Nova followed, trying to maintain her psychic connection to the human's mind. The cargo hold was completely dark. Emergency lighting should have activated when their ship docked, but nothing happened. The only illumination came from the lights on their suits and weapons. He cut the power to this section, Bolt reported through their communication system. "Trying to make it harder for us to see," Kes laughed. "As if darkness will save him. We all have night vision equipment." They activated their enhanced vision systems and began to explore the cargo hold. It was filled with the usual supplies. that frontier colonies needed: food, medicine, tools, replacement parts for mining equipment. Rows of shipping containers created a maze of hiding places. "Spread out," Kes ordered. "Check every container. He has to be hiding somewhere." The hunters began their search methodically. They had done this before with other prey species. Frightened targets always tried to hide in cargo holds or maintenance tunnels. It never worked for long. Bolt stayed with their ship, monitoring the situation from the bridge. "I am getting strange readings from the Defiant's internal sensors," he reported. "The human's heat signature keeps moving, but I cannot get a clear lock on his position." "He is in the maintenance tunnels," Rick said as he checked behind a stack of food containers. "Moving through the ship's ventilation system," agreed Rax. "Standard evasion tactic." Nova suddenly stopped walking. Her face went pale, and she pressed her hands to her temples. "Something is wrong," she whispered. "What do you mean?" Kes asked. His mind ... It changed. "A few minutes ago, I could sense confusion and concern. Normal emotions for someone being hunted. But now ... Now what? Now I cannot sense any fear at all. He is not afraid of us. He is ... Double quotes. She paused, searching for the right word. "He is hunting us." Before anyone could respond to her warning, the lights in the cargo hold went out completely. Even their suit lights failed, plunging them into absolute darkness. "Emergency power failure," Bolt reported from the bridge. "Something is interfering with your equipment." In the darkness they could hear sounds. Soft footsteps moving between the cargo containers. The whisper of air through ventilation grates. Small metallic clicks that might have been tools or weapons being prepared. Kes activated his backup communication system. "Everyone stay calm. Switch to thermal vision. He's just one human. We are trained professionals." But when they switched to thermal imaging, they saw something that made no sense. Heat signatures appeared and disappeared throughout the cargo hold. Sometimes there seemed to be multiple humans moving around them. Other times, there was nothing at all. "How is he doing that?" Rix whispered to his brother. Before Rax could answer, a sound echoed through the cargo hold. It was soft at first, barely audible. Then it grew louder and more distinct. Someone was whistling a tune, a simple melody that somehow sounded threatening in the darkness. The whistling stopped abruptly. In the silence that followed, Nova screamed. Her psychic abilities had been overwhelmed by something she had never encountered before. The human's mind had opened up to her, but instead of thoughts and emotions, she found something else. Memories of a planet where everything was trying to kill the creatures that lived there. Images of ancestors who had survived ice ages and predators and disasters that would have destroyed entire civilizations. She saw flashes of human history, wars that lasted for years, soldiers who kept fighting even when they were outnumbered and outgunned, explorers who walked into unknown dangers just to see what was on the other side. And underneath it all, she sensed something that terrified her more than any monster she had ever encountered. Patience. The infinite, terrible patience of a species that had learned to outlast anything the universe could throw at them. Nova collapsed to the floor, her mind reeling from what she had experienced. The other hunters rushed to help her, but she could only whisper one word over and over: "Run." That was when they heard Bolt screaming over the communication system. His voice was filled with panic, something they had never heard from their comm. "Efficient teammate. He is on the bridge." "How did he get on our ship?" "The boarding tube is still connected to the cargo hold." The communication cut off with a burst of static. In the darkness of the Defiant's cargo hold, the remaining hunters found themselves alone with a predator they did not understand. Kes tried to contact their ship, but there was no response. Whatever had happened to Bolt, he was no longer able to help them. They were trapped on the human ship, in his territory, playing by his rules. The whistling started again, coming from a different direction this time. It echoed off the walls of the cargo hold, making it impossible to tell exactly where it was coming from. The simple melody seemed to surround them, growing louder with each repetition. For the first time in his life, Kes understood why the galaxy's most dangerous assassins had refused to hunt a human. This was not prey they were dealing with. This was something else entirely. Something that had turned their simple hunting mission into a nightmare. In the darkness, Marcus Webb continued his work. He had learned long ago that the best way to deal with predators was to become a better predator. And humanity had spent millions of years learning how to be very, very good at it. The whistling stopped as suddenly as it had started. In the terrible silence that followed, Kes could hear his own heart beating too fast. Beside him, Nova was still on the floor, shaking and mumbling words he could not understand. The twins stood back to back, their weapons pointed in different directions, but there was nothing to shoot at. "Bolt," Kes whispered into his communicator. "Bolt, please respond." Static was the only answer. Rick spoke first, his voice barely audible. "We need to get back to our ship." "The boarding tube is right there," his brother Rax agreed, pointing toward the passage they had used to enter the Defiant. "We can see it from here." But as they looked toward their escape route, they realized something was wrong. The lights that should have been coming from their own ship were dark. The Razor's edge looked dead, floating silently in space like a tomb. Nova finally managed to speak, though her voice was weak and shaky. "He is not on our ship anymore. He is back here." "He is watching us. Where?" Kes demanded, spinning around, with his claws extended. "I do not see anything." "Everywhere," Nova whispered. "He is using the ship itself. The ventilation systems, the maintenance tunnels, the spaces between the walls. He knows every inch of this vessel." A new sound reached their ears, metal sliding against metal somewhere above their heads. Then the soft thud of footsteps in the ceiling. Whatever was up there was moving slowly, deliberately, taking its time. Kes made a decision. "We stick together. We move toward the bridge. If we can take control of the ship, we can force him to surrender." The four hunters began walking through the cargo hold, staying close together. Their weapons were ready, and their enhanced vision systems scanned every shadow. But the Defiant seemed to be fighting them at every step. Doors that should have opened remained sealed. Corridors that their ship's scans had shown to be straight turned out to have unexpected corners and dead ends. "The layout is different from what our computers mapped," Rix observed. "He changed it," Nova said. "Moved walls, rerouted passages. This ship is a maze now." They reached what should have been the entrance to the main corridor leading to the bridge. Instead, they found a solid wall where a door should have been. "That is impossible," Rax said, running his hands over the smooth metal surface. "Our scans showed a door here just an hour ago." Above them, the footsteps continued their slow patrol. Sometimes they seemed to be directly overhead. Other times, they came from walls or floors, as if their hunter was moving through impossible spaces. Kes spotted another passage leading deeper into the ship. "This way. There has to be another route to the bridge." They walked for what felt like hours through corridors that seemed to stretch on forever. The ship was bigger on the inside than it had appeared from outside, which should have been impossible. But nothing about this hunt was following the rules they knew. Nova suddenly grabbed Kes's arm. "Stop," she said. "Do not move. What is it?" "He is right there." She pointed ahead of them, but they saw only an empty corridor. "He is standing 10 feet in front of us, watching us." Kes raised his weapon and fired 3 shots at the spot Nova had indicated. The energy blast lit up the corridor for a brief moment before fading away. There was no target there, no body, no sign that anyone had been hit. "I missed," Kes said, but his voice lacked conviction. "No," Nova replied. "You did not miss. He just was not there when the shots arrived." The implications of that statement sank in slowly. How fast would someone have to move to dodge energy weapons at close range? How could a human, with no cybernetic enhancements, react faster than the speed of light? Rix decided to try a different approach. "Marcus Webb," he called out. "We know you can hear us. We just want to talk." His voice echoed through the ship's corridors, but there was no response. "We are not here to hurt you," Rax added. "We are just bounty hunters doing the job. We can make a deal." This time, there was an answer. It came from everywhere at once, as if the ship itself was speaking. The voice was calm and quiet, but it carried through the walls and floors and ceiling like a whisper in their ears. "You came to my ship," the voice said. "You disabled my engines. You brought weapons into my home." Kes found his voice. "We were hired to bring you in. It is just business. Nothing personal." "Business," the voice repeated. There was something in the way Marcus Webb said the word that made it sound like the most dangerous thing in the universe. "You make your living by hunting other beings. You track them down and kill them or capture them for money." "Yes," Kes said, trying to sound confident. "We are professionals. We have never failed a contract." "I see." The voice was quiet for a moment. "Tell me, professional hunter, what do you know about the species you came to hunt?" Nova tried to warn her companions with her mind, but the fear was making it hard for her to think clearly. She could sense something building in the darkness around them, something patient and terrible, and absolutely certain of what it was going to do. "We know humans are weak," Bolt had said, back when he was still alive on their ship. The memory seemed like a lifetime ago now. "Weak," the voice repeated. "Yes, that is what most species think. We have no claws, no fangs, no natural armor. We cannot breathe in most atmospheres or survive extreme temperatures. We are not the strongest or the fastest or the smartest beings in the galaxy." The hunters found themselves listening despite their fear. There was something hypnotic about the calm voice in the darkness. "But let me tell you what we do have," Marcus Webb continued. "We have patience, we have endurance, and we have something that you hunters have never learned to understand." "What?" Kes asked, though he was not sure he wanted to know the answer. "We have experience being prey." The lights in the corridor suddenly came back on, bright and harsh after so long in darkness. The hunters squinted and raised their hands to shield their eyes. When their vision cleared, they saw that they were no longer in the corridor they remembered entering. They were standing in a large room filled with cargo containers, but the containers were arranged in a pattern that made no sense. Some were stacked on top of others in impossible ways. Others hung from the ceiling or jutted out from the walls. It was like being inside a three-dimensional maze designed by someone who did not understand the normal rules of physics. "On Earth," the voice continued, and now they could tell it was coming from speakers hidden throughout the room. "My ancestors were prey animals for millions of years. Every creature on our planet was bigger, stronger, faster, and better armed than we were. Saber-toothed cats, cave bears, wolves, lions, sharks, all of them hunted us." Nova was crying now, overwhelmed by the emotions she was picking up from their unseen captor. But they were not emotions of fear or anger. They were something far worse. They were the emotions of a being who was completely in control of the situation and was taking his time to enjoy it. "Do you know how my species survived?" Marcus Webb asked. "We learned to think like our predators. We learned to predict their behavior, to understand their weaknesses, to turn their own strengths against them." Kes fired his weapon at one of the speakers, destroying it in a burst of sparks. But the voice continued from other speakers throughout the room. "And when we finally evolved enough to become hunters ourselves, we became the best hunters the galaxy has ever seen. Because we remembered what it was like to be hunted." The twins tried to run toward what looked like an exit, but the passage closed before they could reach it. Other openings appeared in the walls, but they led to corridors that seemed to stretch on forever. "You came here to hunt me," the voice said, and now there was something else in it. Not anger, but something colder and more final. You brought weapons and technology and the arrogance of apex predators. You thought this would be easy. Nova collapsed again, her psychic abilities overwhelmed by the sheer force of will she was encountering. She had touched the mind of their prey, and she had found something that no prey should ever possess: certainty, absolute, unshakable certainty that this hunt would end only one way. But you made one mistake, Marcus Webb continued. You forgot that humans are not prey anymore. We have not been prey for a very long time. The room began to change around them. Walls moved, floors shifted, and the ceiling opened up to reveal passages they had never seen before. The cargo containers rearranged themselves into new patterns, creating new hiding places and new routes through the ship. Now you are going to learn what my ancestors learned. You are going to understand what it feels like to be hunted by something that remembers being prey. The lights went out again. In the darkness, the hunters heard footsteps approaching from every direction. Slow, patient footsteps that took their time because there was no hurry. There was nowhere to run, nowhere to hide, and no way to fight something they could not see or understand. Kes tried one last time to contact their ship, but he knew it was useless. Whatever had happened to Bolt, they were on their own now. 4. Professional hunters trapped on a cargo ship with a human who had just taught them the difference between hunting and being hunted. In the darkness, Marcus Webb smiled. He had work to do. The darkness lasted for what felt like hours. In that time, the hunters learned what true fear meant. They heard sounds all around them, footsteps that came from impossible directions, metal scraping against metal, and sometimes the soft whisper of air moving through hidden passages. But they never saw their hunter. Nova was the first to break. Her psychic abilities, which had always been her greatest strength, became her worst enemy. Every time she tried to read Marcus Webb's mind, she encountered something that drove her deeper into madness. She saw flashes of human history that no alien mind was meant to understand. Wars that lasted for decades, cities that fought to the last defender, explorers who walked into certain death just to see what lay beyond the next mountain. She curled up on the floor and stopped responding to her companions' calls. Her mind had retreated somewhere deep inside itself, hiding from the terrible patience it had encountered. Rix and Rax tried to stay together, but the ship itself seemed to work against them. Corridors that had been straight became curved. Rooms that had been empty filled with obstacles. The twins found themselves separated despite their best efforts, each calling out for the other in the darkness, but never finding each other again. Kes lasted the longest. His pride and his natural predator instincts kept him moving, kept him searching for a way to turn the situation around. He fired his weapon at every sound, every shadow, every hint of movement. But he never hit anything except walls and empty air. When the lights finally came back on, Kes found himself alone in the cargo hold where this nightmare had begun. The shipping containers were back in their original positions. The room looked exactly as it had when they first boarded the ship, as if nothing had happened. But his companions were gone. Kes called out their names, but the only answer was his own echo. He searched the entire ship, room by room, corridor by corridor. He found no trace of the other hunters. It was as if they had simply vanished into the metal walls of the vessel. Finally, exhausted and terrified, he made his way to the ship's communication center. He needed to send a message, to warn others, to let the galaxy know what had happened. His hands shook as he activated the transmitter and set it to broadcast on all criminal frequencies. "This is Kes," he said, his voice cracking with fear. "Leader of the hunting party that took the contract on Marcus Webb. If anyone is listening, do not hunt humans. The stories are true. They are not prey. They are something else entirely." He paused, looking around the empty communication room. Somewhere in the ship, he knew Marcus Webb was listening. Watching, waiting. We came here with 6 hunters, Kes continued. The best equipment money could buy. Military-grade weapons and sensors. We thought we were apex predators hunting weak prey. His voice broke completely for a moment. When he spoke again, it was barely a whisper. We were wrong. Humans are not weak. They are patient. They understand how predators think because they remember being prey. And when you hunt them, they hunt. You back. The transmission ended when Kes could no longer speak. He sat in the communication chair, staring at the controls, waiting for whatever was going to happen next. Marcus Webb finally appeared in the doorway. He looked exactly as he had in the intelligence files. Average height, brown hair, brown eyes. Nothing special about him at all. Just another human cargo pilot trying to make a living in the vast galaxy. But Kes could see something in those ordinary brown eyes that made his blood freeze. It was the look of a being who had never known the meaning of surrender, who would keep fighting long after any reasonable creature would have given up. Your friends are alive, Marcus said quietly. Unconscious. But alive. They are in the escape pods from your ship. Kes blinked in confusion. What? I am not a killer, Marcus explained. I am just a cargo pilot trying to deliver supplies to frontier colonies. But when someone comes to my ship with weapons, when they threaten the supply lines that keep families alive, I have to protect those people. He stepped into the communication room, and Kes instinctively tried to back away. But there was nowhere to go. Your transmission was received by 17 different criminal organizations, Marcus continued. By now, the word is spreading through every cantina and hideout in 3 sectors. That was the point. I do not understand. Marcus smiled, but there was no warmth in it. You came here to hunt me because someone offered you money. But you were never the real target of this hunt. Kes felt his mind reeling as he tried to process what he was hearing. The person who hired you, the client who wanted me dead, is listening to those transmissions right now, Marcus said. They are hearing about what happened to the hunters they sent after me, and they are starting to understand that they made a very serious mistake. The human moved closer, and Kes could smell something on him that he had never encountered before. It was not fear or aggression or any of the usual sense that came from predators or prey. It was something deeper, older, more primal. Humans do not just defend ourselves, Marcus explained. When someone threatens us, we eliminate the threat. Completely. Permanently. You are going to kill me? No, Marcus said. You are going to live. You are going to take your unconscious friends and your damaged ship and leave this system. You are going to spread the word to every hunter and assassin in the galaxy that humans are off limits. He leaned closer, and Kes could see his own reflection in those calm brown eyes. But the person who hired you? The one who thought they could solve their problems by putting a price on a human's head. They are going to learn that we do not just defend ourselves. We hunt down the people who threaten us. We find them wherever they are hiding. And we make sure they never threaten anyone ever again. Kes nodded frantically. I understand. I will. Spread the word. No one will hunt humans, I promise. Good, Marcus said. Now get off my ship. 3 days later, the story reached every major criminal organization in the galaxy. The details varied from telling to telling, but the core truth remained the same. The hunters had found their prey, and the prey had turned out to be the predator. The Assassin's Guild updated their official records, classifying any contract against human targets as species extinction risk level. The Bounty Hunters Association issued a formal advisory warning their members to avoid human-related jobs. The Crimson Syndicate quietly withdrew their offer and transferred the money to other projects, but the most important message was received by the client who had started it all. They found it waiting in their private communication system when they returned to their hidden base on the edge of civilized space. "This is Captain Marcus Webb of the cargo vessel Defiant," the message began. "You hired hunters to kill me because I was interfering with your operations in the Outer Rim. You thought removing one human would solve your problems." The client watched the message with growing terror as they realized what they had brought down on themselves. "I want you to understand something about my species," Marcus continued. "We do not just fight back when threatened. We remember who threatened us, we track them down. We make sure they cannot threaten anyone else." The recording showed Marcus sitting in the captain's chair of his cargo ship. Behind him, the stars moved slowly past the viewports as the Defiant traveled through space. He looked calm and relaxed, like any other pilot making a routine supply run. But his eyes held the same terrifying patience that had broken the minds of trained killers. "I know who you are," Marcus said. "I know where you are hiding. I know about your organization and your operations and the people who work for you. And I am coming." He leaned forward slightly, and his voice became even quieter. "You wanted to hunt a human. Now you get to find out what it feels like when a human hunts you." The message ended, leaving the client staring at a blank screen. Outside their hidden base, the stars continued their ancient dance across the galaxy. But somewhere among those distant suns, a small cargo ship was changing course, following a new destination. Thought the hunt was far from over. It was just beginning. Within a month, the client's organization had vanished completely. Their bases were abandoned, their ships found drifting empty in space, their agents disappeared without a trace. The few survivors who managed to escape told stories of a ghost ship that appeared without warning, of a human who seemed to know their every move before they made it. The galaxy learned an important lesson that year. In a universe full of apex predators, the most dangerous ones were often the ones that did not look dangerous at all. And if you made the mistake of hunting a human, you had better hope you killed them quickly, because if you failed, if you let them escape, they would come for you. They would be patient and methodical, and absolutely relentless. And when they found you, you would understand why the galaxy's most feared assassins had learned to leave humans alone. The contract was declined permanently.